Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopijana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopijana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopijana Ballabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vana Chadi Jamuna Tira Vana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parividagacharya Astatara Satasi Srimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. I think we could be doing a little better with social distancing. Could you sit somewhere not so close to Devaprastha, because just to be on the safer side. Very good. Thank you very much. Very good. Do you happen to have any extra masks in the house? Could you give him one? Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Well, Kartik has begun. I didn't see the moon tonight, but last night it was a full moon, and this morning. So our first day of Kartik, where we began the first class today with Damodara Lila. We'll continue Damodara Lila, month of Damodar. Context a little bit. I'm sure you all know the pastime. From the Bhagavatam itself, the context is from the previous chapter 8, a lot of attention, besides the childhood pastimes of Krishna and Vatsalya Rasa in general, Krishna, the word that's used in the translation is Krishna was restless. And he did things in his stealing of butter and so forth. He did things that were naughty, but one of the transcendental things that Krishna wanted in being naughty was the affection of Mother Yashoda to admonish him. And most little children, they don't like to be scolded. But Krishna wanted. And instead of getting a scolding, Mother Yashoda embraced him. So he did something that would cause her to scold him. I mean, there was many other things going on, but so he ate dirt. And Balaram and his friends told Mother Yashoda he ate dirt, and he said they're a liar. She looked inside his mouth, she saw the universe, and she went through lots of changes about what did I just see. And after narrating all of that, Shukadeva Goswami concludes how fortunate she was to have such love for Krishna. And Maharishi Parikshit echoes the same thought, saying, how many pious activities have she and Nanda undergone to enjoy the childhood pastimes of Krishna like this? And responsive to that question, Shukadeva Goswami narrated the story of Drona and Dara very quickly. Drona and Dara, according to what our acharyas explain, they are partial expansions of the eternal mother and father of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna Loka. Nanda and Yashoda partially expanded themselves into demigods or vasus known by those names. Then, by divine arrangement, they desired very much to have a son. They approached Lord Brahma. We have a desire to have a son. He smiled and consented. Very soon, Krishna is going to appear on earth. You can appear as mother and father. So the explanation we're going to hear, and it's consistently reported by our acharyas, partial expansions of Drona and Dara entered into the eternal Yashoda and Nanda and for Krishna's prakat pastimes. And so the conclusion is Yashoda and Nanda, as Drona and Dara, underwent a lot of austerities to get Krishna as their son. Brahma consented. So then this chapter begins. We're reading the first 2 verses of the chapter and then another one. Recognizing that Maharaj Parikshit wasn't so satisfied spiritually. He wasn't peaceful hearing what he had narrated. He's now going to further go into the exalted nature of the eternal Yashoda and Nanda as mother and father, and especially focus goes to Mother Yashoda. And the Acharyas in the previous chapter comment that they're in one sense they're equal, but as mother she was with Krishna all the time. So most fortunate. She had received the greatest mercy as the mother, even more so than Nanda. They don't make like a big emphasis on that, but that distinction is placed. So now this is, we read the chapter summary and a little bit of the commentary. Continuing, here's Sanatana Goswami commenting on the first 2 verses. I'll read the first 2 verses. Prabhupada's translation. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, continued, Ekada, one day, when Mother Yashoda saw that all the maid servants were engaged in other household affairs, she personally began to churn the yogurt. While churning, she remembered the childish activities of Krishna, and in her own way she composed songs and enjoyed singing to herself about all those activities. So it wasn't a big Sankirtan festival, it was just she was sitting there churning butter, singing songs. We'll hear some more. Sanatana Goswami writes, now the pastime of the Lord being bound up by rope, since he was not fully satisfied with the bliss of being scolded, in his rasa of being affectionate to the devotee. He mentions it at the beginning of his commentary, he mentions it again. There was part of the Damodara Lila and part of the other Lilas was, as a child, Krishna wanting that particular type of affection. Because when a loving mother scolds, it's out of affection, and it's a particular kind of loving affection. And he wanted. And so, I'll read that sentence again. Now the pastime of the Lord being bound up by rope, since he was not fully satisfied with the bliss of being scolded, in his rasa of being affectionate to the devotee. So it's his pleasure, but it's also the pleasure of his devotee, the loving devotee that has the capacity out of love to scold Krishna. Not that he takes scolding from anybody, but he takes scolding from his loving devotee because it's loving and he loves it. He desired the bliss of being controlled by his devotee. Yashoda was called most fortunate. She was even more fortunate than Nanda. Her greater fortune is described now. Yashoda means she who gives fame. She gave fame to Krishna as the person who is controlled by his devotee. Now, she is honored, and he is honored by showing his bliss in being controlled by his devotee. Ajita becomes Jita. As the wife of Nanda, she had many servant girls. One day, when all the servants were engaged in duties in the house, other than churning the yogurt and stirring milk for her son. She began churning only the yogurt to make butter to feed her son. It would be impossible to churn the yogurt from all the milk of unlimited cows. She constantly churned nirma, mantra, M-A-N-T-H-A, manta, to make the best butter. She sang all the songs famous in Braja concerning the activities of her child. She sang about the killing of Putana, etc. While churning the yogurt, she remembered those songs because her heart was overcome by her affection and because the pastimes were amazing. Always remembering the activities of her son, she sang about them, taking shelter of singing by her nature. She had engaged the servants in other duties so that she could churn the yogurt herself in order to sing about her son's activities with great affection. And then he concludes, and this was by the desire of the Lord to be tied up. And reference to this verse is found in the 7th chapter. And so here's the verse from the 7th chapter, text 18. A year after Krishna's appearance, Mother Yashoda was pampering her son on her lap, but suddenly she felt the child to be heavier than a mountain peak, and she could no longer bear his weight. That was a signal. It's a pastime. He made arrangements for his pastime because he wanted to go flying in the air. Krishna's thinking, while living in Braja, I do not deserve to be covered up or restricted at all. Thinking in this way, Krishna desired to go into the sky. When he was 1 year old, Ekada, this event occurred, since it will be said later in chapter 26 of this 10th canto. At the age of 1, while sitting peacefully, he was taken up into the sky by the demon Trinavarta, but baby Krishna grabbed the demon's neck, causing him great pain, and thus killed him. Yashoda cared for him, kissed him, and giving him her breast. Sometimes she lifted him in her arms playfully. She was knowledgeable, sati, of how to care for him. She was not able to carry him by her own strength. She was alone at the time. Later, a similar condition is described. That's this verse, reference to this verse. One day when Mother Yashoda saw all the maid servants were engaged in other household affairs, she personally began to churn the yogurt. Here's description from Krishna Sandarbha, making reference to this verse. Krishna Sandarbha is the 4th of the 6 Sandarbhas, and in Krishna Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami has elevated the topic from to its pinnacle of Sambandha Gyan. So not only Krishna is Paramatma and Krishna is Bhagavan, but Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of God. It's Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, that important verse. So, of all the forms of the Lord, this form of Krishna is the superlative and the original source of all. That's the topic in Krishna Sandarbha. So he makes reference to these first 2 verses of chapter 9. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10:9, 1 through 20, we find, because it's not just the first 2, it's the first 20 verses, we find an explanation of Nanda and Yashoda's eternal parenthood of Sri Krishna. And in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.49, we find the explanation of Nanda Yashoda's previous birth as Drona and Dara. The seeming contradiction of these two statements may be resolved by accepting the explanation that Drona and Dara are partial incarnations of Nanda and Yashoda, the Lord's eternal parents in the spiritual world. We may also note that the description of the eternal parenthood of Nanda and Yashoda is given after the description of their previous birth as Drona and Dara. If there are two contradictory statements in the scriptures, the second statement should be accepted, and the previous statement should be interpreted so that it does not contradict the later statement. The rule of interpretation, this rule of interpretation, is expressed in Vedanta Sutra in the following words, and it gives the Sanskrit. So it's also, in other places, it's referenced in Nyaya of Gautama Rishi, but Nyaya of Gautama Rishi is also making his own comments on Vedanta Sutra, and so the rule is what was just said. And it's important, in Sanskrit, it's an important rule to remember. Certainly it applies here. And it's used repeatedly by our acharyas to explain statements within the Vedas that seem to indicate something. The material variegatedness is not within the absolute truth. So the impersonalists say that means it's false. And the Vaishnavas say there's a rule that's right in Vedanta Sutra itself that says later statements take precedent, and the former statement should be interpreted to match the later statement. It's just a Sanskrit rule. So Yashoda, although they're back to back, the end of chapter 8 and the beginning of chapter 9, they're back to back, but the later one is the original parents, Nanda and Yashoda. So text 3 of chapter 9. Translation reads, dressed in a yellow saffron sari. This is describing Mother Yashoda's apparel. With a belt tied about her full hips, Mother Yashoda pulled on the churning rope, laboring considerably, her bangles and earrings moving and vibrating, and her whole body shaking. Because of her intense love for her child, her breasts were wet with milk. Her face, with its very beautiful eyebrows, was wet with perspiration, and malati flowers were falling from her hair. Purport. This is Srila Prabhupada's purport. Anyone who desires to be Krishna conscious in motherly affection or parental affection should contemplate the bodily features of Mother Yashoda. It is not that one should desire to become like Yashoda, for this is Mayavada. Either in parental affection or conjugal love, friendship or servitorship, in any way, we must follow in the footsteps of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, not try to become like them. Therefore, this description is provided here. Advanced devotees must cherish this description, always thinking of Mother Yashoda's features, how she was dressed, how she was working and perspiring, how beautifully the flowers were arranged in her hair, and so on. One should take advantage of the full description provided here by thinking of Mother Yashoda in maternal affection for Krishna. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, this verse, in presenting the ideal mother of Krishna in her affection, form, and qualities, is a meditation necessary for those worshippers in the Vatsalya mood. Anyone interested in cultivating Vatsalya Bhav, parental affection, should meditate upon the bodily form, qualities, features, and affection of Mother Yashoda described here. Her cloth, kshaw mum, made of fibers of the atasi tree, was very fine and colored yellow. Her face was blackish according to the Krama Deepika. She wore a belt while performing the churning. By mentioning her wide hips and moving eyebrows, the beauty of all her limbs is indicated. Her bangles, moving on her arms, tired from churning, and her sweating face both shone. From her hair, black like a rain cloud, fell malati flowers like drops of rain. The beauty of all of Yashoda's limbs is indicated just by mentioning her wide hips, moving eyebrows, and tinkling bangles. Her arms, tired from churning, and her sweating face both shone. I'll just read one more. This is Jiva Goswami saying many of the same things. Describing Yashoda because of a manifestation of affection for her as a mother, having unalloyed affection for Krishna, Shukadev shows her qualification by her beauty and affection. The description of her eyebrows and hips indicate as well the beauty of all her other limbs, though they are not mentioned. The beauty of her dress is indicated by her cloth and belt. Kshaw ma means linen, cloth made from the flax. This had a thin appearance and was of various colors, including shades of yellow. According to Kramadipika, her complexion is blackish, but yellow according to the Gautamiya Tantra. The cloth was tied with a cord, having great beauty. The beauty of her natural movements is described. She pulled the ropes, and her earrings swayed. Her hair was tied up with jasmine flowers, which grow profusely during Kartik month. The suffix ka, that's a detail. Her affection is described. Milk dripped from her breasts out of affection for her son. Her breasts moved because of her singing about Krishna's pastimes. Joy was expressed by the movements of her eyebrows. So, in the morning classes we've been discussing, now it's Kartik month, so we'll pause on chapter 38 of Canto 10. But there's a series of verses in chapter 38 that's very similar. It's just a Kura's Darshan of Krishna, which he was anticipating, and then he saw Krishna. And all kinds of details of his form, his smile, his favorable glancing, his strong arms, the way that he and Balaram walked. I don't know what a young elephant walking looks like, but that's what it's compared to. They appeared to be two mountains, one of emerald and one of silver, covered with gold because of their ornaments. Then their strength, and he saw all these things. Recognize, because he's a not a Brijbasi, but he's in Vrindavan, seeing Krishna in Vrindavan. So he's seeing Krishna in Vrindavan, both in terms of the sweetness of how he's decorated and smiling and behaving, but also recognizing he's the Lord of all the universes, plural. He and Balaram, the Lords. So it's a nice set of verses to hear again and again and hear again and again and hear again and again. Now, it's Krishna's pastime as a cowherd boy, but Akrura is in the mood of dasya rasa, not as a resident of Vrindavan. So he has knowledge of his opulence, Aishwarya, Gyan. He's experiencing the sweetness appearance of Krishna in Braja, because outside of Braja he doesn't dress like this. And his countenance, his happiness. They were going to milk the cows, and they had already been home and bathed and freshly dressed with fresh cloth and new ornaments and new garlands and pearl necklaces down to his feet. He was really decked out, but in a sweet mood. So there are different darshans of Krishna like that. The one here is the darshan of Mother Yashoda. Now, those of you that like to read Prabhupada's books, you're aware that the Bhagavatam is teaching us, Lord Chaitanya is teaching us what the Bhagavatam is teaching us. And Rupa Goswami is giving us Lord Chaitanya's teachings. That there's a stage of devotion and practice, and there's a stage of devotion that's spontaneous. And the meditation upon, while doing one's everyday activities, these sadhana practices that we do, meditating upon eternal associates, the ragatmika bhaktas, such as the eternal associates of Krishna and Vrindavan. This is meditation upon them while carrying out one's devotional duties in life. This leads to the spontaneous or Raganuga bhakti stage. It's an essential step in the Raganuga bhakti stage, which is the teaching that Lord Chaitanya gave us. In Rupa Goswami's definition, even of sadhana bhakti, that it's meant to bring us to the raga stage. It's just directly in the Sanskrit of his writings, and this means what we just did. In the way that Prabhupada, he didn't use the technical language, but anyone that's interested in achieving Vatsalya Prema should or is to meditate upon all these details. So one can just read the details, and they're very, it's the image is nice. It's poetic image and very specific in the color of her dress and the jasmine flowers in her hair, and her bangles and her movements of her arms and her color of her hair and perspiration and her singing. It's for an artist, say, it's a perfect depiction for an artist to make a painting. And the paintings themselves can be simply images, like we were saying earlier today. That so many nice paintings of Krishna's Damodara Lila. Practically every home in ISKCON has either one of these murtis or a photograph of a painting of this wonderful pastime, because it's a wonderful pastime. And the wonderful pastime from the chapter summary and even what we just heard, it's Krishna's glory. He's Bhaktavatsala. He enjoys being controlled by the love of his devotees. And it's not that the devotees love the opportunity to control the Lord. They love whatever the Lord loves. And because he desired to be controlled by his devotee, Mother Yashoda, he enacted a pastime whereby she scolded him and controlled him and bound him with rope. But there was an obstacle even for Mother Yashoda. So what to speak of ourselves, that we're not on the spontaneous platform, etc., etc., etc. And there's obstacles, abundant obstacles. And why are the obstacles? It's a common question. Why is there difficulty in the lives of devotees? There's different reasons why there may be difficulties in the lives of devotees. And if you're on the platform of Mother Yashoda, that it's just Krishna's going to enjoy your reciprocation of being very determined on the strength of your love to control Krishna. If you're Mother Yashoda, that's a reason. So although she's like when he showed the universe within his mouth because she was scolding him for eating dirt, he still wasn't satisfied. He, do the whole thing. Tie me up. Out of love. And then she couldn't, and she couldn't, and she couldn't, and then she could. Because Krishna was bound not by the ropes, but by the love. So that's it's exalted in our, not only in the Hare Krishna movement's life that we observe Damodara Lila for the whole month, but throughout the Vaishnava practices, it's a very celebrated pastime, and that's one of the reasons. Now, it doesn't happen ordinarily, or Krishna is controlled by the love of his devotees outside of Braj. And a very wonderful example of this is Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish Maharaj was not a Brajbasi. He was a Vaikunthavasi. And Lord Vishnu said to same principle to Durvasa Muni, that I'm controlled by my devotee Ambarish. I don't have any independence, which is not true. He has full independence. And he can and chooses to submit with the fullness of his independence at the feet of the devotee. He's dependent upon the devotee. He likes. Even the Lord of Vaikuntha likes. Or in this case, Lord of Svetadweep likes. But he likes. Now that's a very intimate position, because normally in Vaikuntha we don't see the Lord submits to the control of his devotees. It's extraordinary. But it's the nature of a loving person, is those who feel love towards that loving person, the loving person reciprocates the love of the beloved. It's natural. And that goes into this whole topic that's right in Bhagavad Gita, that's described elsewhere at length. We were discussing Samaham Sarvabhuteshu Name Dvesho Stina Priyaha. He's equal to everyone. But then for someone who is a devotee, he shows partiality. We were discussing this for like 4 days in a row from commentaries. He's partial, but he's not partial. He's not partial, but he's partial. It's a contradiction. I mean, purposely I'm speaking that way because it certainly seems contradictory. And there's different ways of resolving it that our acharyas enter into, but one of the main features is the power of bhakti. The power of bhakti has the power to control the one who has no controller. He who is Ishvara Parama Krishna is controlled by the devotee. Everyone's an Ishvara, and there's Parama Ishvara, and the Parama Ishvara has no one who is equal to or above him. Then there's the devotee who's below him, who Krishna puts above himself by his loving. He loves to love. That's our Lord's nature. And it's one of the mysteries, and a very important mystery amongst the many mysteries of a life of devotion to Krishna. And this pastime, the way that Sanatana Goswami began it, verses 1 through 20 are detailing the exaltedness of Mother Yashoda, and then in 21:22 he summarizes it. She's so special amongst all the special persons. Of course, it doesn't discount the cowherd boys, nor it doesn't discount Nanda either, and it certainly doesn't discount the gopis, the young cowherd girls who have conjugal affection toward Krishna. They're superlatively exalted also. But her Mother Yashoda's position is very special. Her love towards Krishna and Krishna's love towards her. He engages her in activities that he doesn't engage others in. He cleverly, and from the previous chapter, he cleverly steals, and everybody knows that, and the elder ladies, Mother Yashoda's friends, they also know stealing is bad. And your son steals, so he's bad. You got to do something to control this boy. But they're saying laughingly, and she says, well, you have so much butter, just give him butter. And they complain, saying, we try giving him butter, but he refuses it. He just likes to steal. He's got a compulsive disorder here. He's got to steal. And he's so clever about it. When we hide things, anyways, they go through a whole explanation. But it's a sweetness to stimulate their feelings of love for him in this scolding manner. And, it induces, because of the sweetness of their love for him, it induces the sweetness of their love for him in variegated ways. And that's the nature of Krishna. He is stimulating the love of his devotees in very, very special ways, especially in Vrindavan, very sweet ways that are hard to understand. It's, that's also part of the mystery. Because he could stimulate their love in different ways. So why stealing? And he just keeps doing it. I mean, he doesn't do it for his whole life, but he does it for his childhood pastimes again and again. It becomes a thing. And they enjoy. When the husbands catch Krishna in the act, Krishna just looks at them with unblinking eyes and smiles. And their hearts melt and they forget everything. So, Damodara Lila. And there's going to be a whole month of this, at least for me, the morning and evening, just diving into the Acharya's commentaries. Very nice. And there's slight variety of how the very same pastime is described in different texts, Harivamsa and Gopal Champu and this one, that one. And we'll be hearing those variegated descriptions as well. Slightly different perspective. But it's just in the beginning part of the Brahma Vimohan Lila, which comes right after the Agasura Lila, there's several verses that are describing hearing in such a manner that topic that one has heard many, many times take on newer and newer dimension. And the newer and newer is not like, the details and facts of the pastime, but the fragrance and the sweetness of the pastime by hearing it again and again. Something like chanting the holy name again and again, because we're the sweetness, all Nija Sarva Shaktis, all potencies are there in these pastimes and Krishna's form and Krishna's activities and this particular darshan of Mother Yashoda, for example. But hearing it again and again, there's something that happens, that the stimulation of ecstatic love arises, and that those feelings are newer and newer. And the stimulant is the form, the qualities, the pastimes, the name, etc. of Krishna. That's on the spontaneous platform when there's eagerness to hear. And one of the things that helps to bring about that eagerness to hear is more hearing. I'm looking at you because you asked this question several times. So let's see if there's some discussion. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj, for coming, and thank you for such nice elaborations on this wonderful topic. I'm thinking I didn't hear something correctly, so I was looking for clarification. I thought what I heard you read in one of the first two verses, I think, or one of the early verses, was that Krishna, after being tied up, was not feeling satisfied with being chastised.
No. Yeah.
So did I hear that not correctly?
There were two where he wanted to be scolded: the butter stealing and the being scolded for eating dirt. He was not sufficiently Sanatana Goswami saying
those two weren't satisfying.
Yes.
After those two, he still wasn't satisfied.
There was a certain rasa that he wanted of feeling scolded by Mother Yashoda, so he went beyond it.
So then he was satisfied.
Yes.
After getting.
Yes.
Thank you.
You talked about how Ajamil is not exactly a Brajbasi. And
Could you turn the speaker so it's facing me, like the whole machine? Because people are speaking with their masks on and it's hard to hear. Thank you. Go ahead.
So you mentioned how Ajamil is not exactly a Brajbasi. Sorry,
Ambarish.
Ambarish. Okay, Ambarish, yes. So I was wondering, like, if their bhakti is in Aishwarya and not in Madhurya. And similarly with Prahlad Maharaj, I was wondering about a lot of devotees who are said to be mentioned to be pure devotees.
They're pure. So I'm not sure what you're asking, but I'll say back what I think you're asking. There's it's not two buckets, but there's a direction where the Lord's opulence is greatly appreciated. There's another direction where the Lord's sweetness is greatly appreciated, and there's some overlap. And Ambarish is very clearly a Brijvasi, a Vaikunthavasi. He worshipped Govinda, by the way. That was his deity. But his Lord was the Lord of Vaikuntha. And so his Lord is the one that gave him the Sudarshan Chakra and protected him with his Sudarshan Chakra, not Krishna and Vrindavan. And that's where Durvasa Muni went. So it was primarily, his mood is primarily Aishwarya, Bhav. Then there's Akrura. And Akrura was in Mathura. That's not the same as Vaikuntha, but Mathura is not the same as Braja either. And his position, similar to Uddhava, his position was full recognition of Krishna's supremacy, his position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so when he went to Vrindavan, he was overwhelmed with the exaltedness of the residents of Vrindavan and their good fortune, as was Uddhava, as was Brahma, because the exaltedness is the sweetness. Now, we use this word madhurya as sweetness in more than one way. One, of course, is those that had conjugal affection for Krishna. But there's another sweetness that all the residents of Vrindavan have. And one way of explaining those two different uses of the term sweetness is they all want the happiness of Krishna, and the superlative happiness of Krishna is meeting with Radharani. And so they all are tinged with or have some degree of madhurya bhav. Or it can be understood in a different way. The madhurya bhav is just the sweetness of Krishna's pastimes, like the cowherd boys. They're oblivious to his divinity. I mean, they see it, but they're like...
I mean, I have quick follow-ups, if that's okay. If you're finished,
sure.
Sorry. Yeah, I want you to comment on Prahlad Maharaj too, and I wanted to find out if we can. I think our path is to go to Raganuga, and then, then that's how we want to progress. But there are other paths that don't require us to go through Raganuga exactly, through Aishwarya Bhav, where we can attain the Supreme Abode.
Well, the Supreme Abode, keeping it really simple, to enter into Krishna's eternal pastimes in Vrindavan, Raganuga Bhakti is an essential path. Now, the love that Prahlad has, because you've asked it twice now, he's a pure devotee. He hasn't taken up Raganuga. He's eternally situated in Aishwarya Bhav. The Lord, he's pure. The Lord is his master. I'm your servant. There's nothing else between us. He's Shuddha Bhakta. He says that the personality of Godhead, Lord Nrsingadev, you sent me to this world to teach the way of pure devotional service, the mood of pure devotional service. So he does that. So now, ISKCON, or followers of Lord Chaitanya, we revere Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj. Lord Chaitanya revered Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj. He heard them hundreds of times again and again from Gadadhar Pandit. It's not like, oh, I want the Raganuga program. Shuddha Bhakti. And amongst those who are in that stage of Shuddha Bhakti, to enter into Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes, as Lord Chaitanya taught, as Rupa Goswami taught us that Lord Chaitanya taught, and as Srimad Bhagavatam teaches, and we just read in that purport, to enter into Vatsalya Bhav, because Vatsalya Bhav isn't there in Vaikuntha. Who is Lord Narayan's mother? No such thing. To enter into that kind of love as is found in Vrindavan, one must, not optional. It's so the ragatmikas, those who are perfected soul, eternally perfected souls in Krishna's pastimes, they become objects of one's meditation. Not imitating, but imbibing the mood of by meditation upon, including their dress, their eyes, their ornaments, the swinging of their earrings, Mother Yashoda's earrings, the perspiration.
And that should happen spontaneously, right?
Yes.
It's revealed.
Well, when that stage comes in our devotional lives, that the attraction for the temporary has subsided, those attractions will naturally arise. And that's Raganuga. When there's attraction, there's meditation upon the object of one's attraction. The love that they have for Krishna in Nectar of Instruction.
Oh, Nectar of Instruction. Okay.
And my computer's here at the end. I'll make sure it's text 8. Might be text 11.
Yes, I remember that one. Yes.
Might be text 11. Might be text 11.
Thank you so much.
I'll look it up. I'll let you know before I'll leave tonight.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, in the verse that we read this evening, Prabhupada says that one should not desire to become like Yashoda, and that's Mayavada. Could you explain that?
Well, language is important, isn't it? So, like Mother Yashoda could mean A or B. You become Mother Yashoda. That's like Mother Yashoda. Or it could be as a follower of Mother Yashoda, and that's correct. That's to want to be an assistant of or in the mood like Mother Yashoda. That's wanted. The other is the imitation or the replacement of, or you become. That's Mayavad. Okay? Mother Yashoda, the position, go ahead, give the microphone. The position of Mother Yashoda is not a post, like Brahma's a post or Indra's a post or other services to Krishna are posts and different persons occupy the post. Mother Yashoda isn't a post and somebody occupies the Mother Yashoda post. She's eternally Mother Yashoda.
For him, his question, Putana is given a position of other
Maid servant. She assists Mother Yashoda. There's like who knows how many assistants of Mother Yashoda in her activities with the worldly pastimes. She has many assistants. She's the queen. She has many assistants. So like that. But in the mood of Mother, it's described in chapter 8. This is chapter 9. It's described in chapter 8 that in the childhood pastimes of Krishna, that's the title of the chapter, that the ladies that had children, they would do their household duties in the mood of doing their household duties for Krishna, although Krishna wasn't their son. They had the mood like Mother Yashoda. They had their own children. They had their own husband. They had their own, paraphernalia. But they were doing their household duties for the pleasure of Krishna. It's clear?
Yeah, Madam. I have one more question. Krishna being kind, that he's reciprocating with the Brajvasis as to Mother Yashoda to increase their own ecstasy, and but as a practicing devotees, we do see little reciprocation from Krishna being kind upon us. So my question is that how should I take it? Like, is it just the encouragement for myself, or when the reciprocation is there?
I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you asking when reciprocation comes, how are you to see it? Or are you saying when reciprocation comes in a way that I wasn't expecting it, how am I to see it? When it comes in the form of some difficulty, how am I to see it? Which of those options are you asking?
Not as a difficulty, but as we do some services, then we see that loving reciprocation from Krishna. Krishna's kindness.
It's a shadow.
Yeah.
That's Rupa Goswami's explanation, or Prabhupada's explanation of Rupa Goswami's teaching. It's a shadow. It's a hint of the real thing. But the shadow tells us something about the real thing. But it gives us indication, well, the real thing must be really special. If the shadow is this. A glimpse, another word is used, a glimpse. Anything else?
Just want to make sure I'm understanding this question correctly. The following, we must follow the footsteps of inhabitants of Vrindavana, not to try to become like them. My understanding is that in contrast, in the material world, when we say we're following someone, is to become like them out of envy, whereas here the mode of Brajavasi is to become their servants and not. Is that
well,
right?
you did some editing beyond what Prabhupada wrote. Not out of envy. That's not the distinction. It's the stepping back from that particular language. Look at the big picture of how Prabhupada would teach us how we're to look at exalted devotees. And yes, we're to look at them as to serve them. And not to imitate, but to become like them, to become qualitatively, to imbibe their qualities by that association through service. Is that all right? I mean, it doesn't, I'm not buying into your language, is what I'm saying. I'm not putting the stamp on, that's that, you got it right. I'm changing your language, if that's all right. The person who's competitor for Krishna wants to do better than be more than Krishna. That's the Kamsa. And the Mayavadi, Kamsa wasn't a Mayavadi. The Mayavadis want to become equal to, or the replacement for, become one with. So not in that way, but imbibe the quality of through service. Yes. The Vatsalya rasa aspirant following Raganuga Bhakti wants to become Mother Yashoda's assistant, and that way, like Mother Yashoda, by assisting her through service. Yes. As opposed to replace Mother Yashoda or become equal to Mother Yashoda or become one with Mother Yashoda, in that sense become like Mother Yashoda. Not that. Okay.
I would like to know about what is mean by pleasing Krishna for a practicing devotee. What does it mean for a practicing devotee to please Krishna?
Okay, well, keep it real simple. It's please just follow the take to heart, try to carefully understand the instructions of the spiritual master and take those instructions to your heart. For a practicing devotee, that's what it means. By pleasing the spirit, yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado, that's what it means, to please Krishna. And Krishna is not pleased if that person who is his representative is displeased.
Thank you.
Okay? That's simple.
Yeah.
Anything else? Our host? Anything? Okay. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki. Jai.